Okay, welcome back. It's been some time, a little bit of a break during the holidays. 6th day of the month, the holy month of Cheshvan, 5778. Yeah, the first class of, I think so, 5778, if I'm not mistaken. So, greetings to one and all. Our motto has not changed, even though we went on a break for a past month. Our classes are for the sake of heaven, to improve ourselves, to take a small step, any step forward in our Avodat Hashem, in our service of God. Okay, today's title, it's a little bit long, but I know it's hard in our times for people to keep on the same dial, but here it goes. Jews and Gentiles, will they reunite into one family, one equal family in the end of days? Once again, I know it's a mouthful. Jews and Gentiles in the end of days, will they unite as one equal family? Okay, we're going to take it from the top. It's always a good place to start. And let's roll. We have the prototypes. We have representing the nations of the world stepping in the right corner here. We have Esav. We have stepping in the left corner. We have representing the Jewish people. We have Jacob. Jacob and Esav. Now this is a very interesting matchup over here, because we know that they are twins. They were born during the same time, at the same time, and in fact, up until the age of 13, according to some opinion, up to the age of 15, nobody knew any difference. No one was able to catch any difference between the two characters, Yaakov and Esav. They were not able to see any difference in the classrooms, the principal, the teachers, you know, when they had a PTA meeting, there were the same reports given, same good reports that were given to both of them. So we see there is some kind of connection between these two. Number one, for 9 months, their mother Rivka is carrying around the two children in her womb. So they are together, and they come out, they're born together as twins. And they, 13, 15 years down the line, there's still no difference between them, also seemingly on a spiritual level. I say seemingly because I'm not going to get into right now the points that if we really try to investigate what was going on spiritually, even before the two were born, we would see that on the inside, where no one watches, it's only the Torah, which with its prophetic vision is able to detail us what is going on really behind the scenes. We with our human eye would never be able to catch this, of course, especially we're talking about days before the ultrasound to see what's really going on inside. But the Torah is kind of a spiritual ultrasound to see what's going on. So there are many, many differences when you look closer and you look on the inner spiritual side. There are tremendous differences between the two, which is also an important point. So we have exteriorly, we have two brothers that seem to be the same wave. They're heading the same direction. They are the same, even though, once again, I'm saying on a spiritual level, it's not so at all. It's not so at all. And we could even say also on a physical level, it will also prove to be not so either. There will be definitely a parting of ways here coming up. Okay, so at the age of 13 or 15, there is a separation. We see that Jacob remains to be the righteous person that we knew all these years. And Esav goes on a different path. He becomes a tremendously wicked fellow. Okay, so we have a separation. At the beginning we were together, we were united. And then there's a separation between these two brothers, these two nations. Israel and we'll call it the nations of the world, Edom, Esav, the Western Christian civilization. Okay, now that separation continues. It didn't just happen and then, okay, it was finished. When Jacob and Esav are 63 years old, those divisions still continue for the last 50 years, but now it gets even worse. Because now Rivka, the mother of Jacob and Esav, tells her son Jacob that Isaac is fearing, the father Isaac is fearing that perhaps he's going to pass away. Therefore he wants to give a blessing before he possibly passes away. And Rivka was told via a prophecy by God that Jacob should sneak in and take the blessing from the father. Why did it have to be done in a roundabout way, in not such an honest way? That's an entire different class for a different time, even though we've touched the subject many times. Why it had to be that fashion of taking the blessing, it had to be that way. But for now, Jacob at the age of 63, and Esav the same age of course, he steals the blessing from Esav. And now he's forced to flee because Esav wants to kill his own brother. He wants to kill his own brother. So he's forced to flee. How long does he flee for? Approximately 36 years. 14 years he's hiding out in a yeshiva. Not a bad place to hide out. And that's for 14 years. And then 22 years he's in the White House. No, not what you think in Washington, D.C., but actually the house of Lavan. Okay, Lavan. So 36 years later, once again, they are reunited. The two brothers, can you pass me the tissue, please? I got to shed a few tears here. After 36 years, the Esav and Yaakov, Jacob and Esav are reunited. The Jewish nation and the nations of the world are once again reunited. And now Esav invites Jacob to come along with him to the countryside of Seir in the eastern part of the land of Israel. And Jacob does not want to offend Esav by saying, get lost, man, I don't trust you, and we have to stay separate because my mission in life is to be separate and to uplift myself and my nation to be a holy nation. So therefore we have to separate. In order for us to reach that level of spirituality, of holiness, it has to be done when the Jewish people are separate from the nations of the world. So, on the other hand, he doesn't want to lie. He doesn't want to lie, doesn't want to insult him, but he doesn't want to lie either. So what he does, he says, you know what, I'll meet you in your territory, which is called Seir. And the sages say an unbelievable Torah on this expression by Jacob that we'll meet up soon in your town of Seir. This is an unbelievable statement. Our sages tell us the following, that Jacob was hinting to the Jewish people and to all the world that there will be a reunion between Esav and Jacob. However, it's not the reunion you would like to especially be at, because of the fact that the reunion that Jacob is hinting to is the reunion which is mentioned in the prophet Obadiah. Obadiah, there's only one chapter, so I don't have to look too far through it. There's only one chapter there. And it talks about how in the end of days, Hashem will lash out at the nations of the world in this area of the world, and he will punish for all the damage, for all the tragedies and holocausts and pogroms that the nations of the world have imposed on the Jewish people. That is what the reunion that Jacob hints to is mentioned in the prophet of Obadiah. Ve'alu Moshiim be'ar Tzion lishpot et ar Esav. It will come the day and they will go up. The saviors of the Jewish people, including Jacob, which we will see later, will go up to the mountain of Esav, to the nations of the world, and there will be the final day of judgment and punishment for the nations of the world. So there is a reunion, but it will be only at the time of coming of the Messiah, when God will mete out harsh judgment and punishment against the nations of the world. Okay, so now we had a slight reunion here after 36 years. Esau wants to continue this reunion. Jacob knows better. He knows that it's his downfall if he agrees, and he pushes him off. He says, we will meet up soon on the mountain of Seir. We will meet up soon, hinting to the end of days, when the coming of the Messiah and the day of judgment against the nations of the world for all they have done against the Jewish people for all these thousands of years. So, was that the last reunion? No. There is one more reunion. Jacob, 80 years later, after this, take that back, Jacob 30 years later, after that meeting, 30 years later, he goes down to Egypt, and there eventually, after spending 17 years in Egypt, he eventually passes away. And now he requests before he passed away, he requests to be buried in the land of Israel. So Joseph gets special permission by the king Pharaoh in order to bury the father Jacob in the land of Israel, not only in the land of Israel, but in the town of Hebron, the holy cave of the patriarchs, Marat HaMachpelah. Okay, so very interesting. Listen to what happens at this type of reunion, so to speak, a reunion. Okay, so we have this reunion is recorded by our holy sages in the Talmud, Tractate Sotah, page 13, side A. He says the following: the whole comrade of Jacob, the whole entourage of Jacob go from Egypt to the land of Israel, and they're entering the cave of the patriarchs in Hebron, and there all of a sudden Esau and his military men come and block the entrance to the cave of the patriarchs. What's going on over here? It's a big argument. Esau says, you know what? This really belongs to me. This cave of the patriarchs really belongs to me. Oh, very interesting. Very interesting that it belongs to you. Actually, we were certain that Abraham bought it for his offspring, which of course is Isaac, and then of course Isaac is Jacob. As it says in many places in the Talmud and other places, that there is no connection. There is no spiritual connection. There is no real family line between, for example, Ishmael or Esav to Isaac or to Jacob. There's no real family line there. It is true that, they were born, they had, certain family members that were together, but on a spiritual level, there absolutely is no connection between the two. Anyways, so there's a big argument, and Joseph tells his brother Naphtali, who's a very fast runner. I don't know if he participated in the Olympic Games or not, but anyways, he tells him, listen, go back to, what's for Naphtali to run back to Egypt? How many? It's 400, maybe 400 kilometers. It's not such a big deal for him. He's fast like a deer, and he starts on his journey to go back to prepare the documents, to retrieve the documents that prove that this belongs to the Jewish people, to Abraham, Isaac, and also Jacob. So as he's going down, there's a person in the audience, a son of one of the 12 tribes. His name is Hushim. Now Hushim, if you look at the way the Torah spells out his name, it's spelled with 4 letters, even though you could technically spell it with 5 letters. It's spelled with Chet, Shin, Yud, Mem. If you turn around, if you jumble the letters around, you'll see that it comes out to the word Messiah, Mashiach. Once again, there's a person, he's the son of Dan, one of the 12 tribes. If you take his name, which in the Torah is missing a Vav, it comes out to the exact same word as Messiah, Mashiach, which is very interesting, because you'll see the point that we're getting to here, talking about the final days. So this is an example. There's a lot of undercurrent going here. When we talked about the reunion, the first reunion, 36 years after Jacob and Esau had not met up together, and Esau is inviting Jacob to come and let's get together. Yeah, it sounds like Casey and the Sunshine Band song. You know, let's get together. And then Jacob, smartly, he refuses, but he gives them a little bit of a hint. And he says, you know, we will get together. Yeah, on that big day of judgment where you guys are going to get punished. So we see the meeting, the reunion of Jacob and Esau, it has messianic undertones to it. Even though we see that thousands of years have unfortunately passed, they didn't have to pass, but because of our bad deeds, etc., we've schlepped this out, we've carried it out so long. But we see already there are messianic, the end of days connotations between any type of reunion between Jacob and Esau. That happened 36 years after they departed. And that also happened when Jacob passes away. We are once again reunited with Esau. And now we are Hushim, whose name is the same letters as Messiah, which is another clue and a hint to the end of days coming the Messiah. There's a type of reunion here, and Hushim, the Messiah, says what's going on here, because he was hard of hearing. He was hard for him to speak. He also stuttered. So he didn't catch what was going on here with the whole conversation that was going on between Esau and the brothers, that Esau wants to see some type of document that will prove that the Cave of Patriarchs actually does belong to the Jewish people. So he doesn't know. And anyways, they, I guess, sign language him that, you know, what's going on. And he says, what? My father, Jacob, is going to be here? We want to bury him? And he's just sitting out here, you know, being it's such an embarrassment. And we know that every second that we do not bury a person, it's tremendous pain to the dead person. Tremendous pain. So therefore, in Judaism, thank you, in Torah and Judaism, we try as fast as possible to bury somebody that died. It's very, very important to do it as fast as possible. So why should my father, Jacob, says Hushim, why should my father be embarrassed and, shunned in such a situation? And therefore he takes an axe or a sword and he chops the head off of Esau. Now this is very interesting. So we have twins, they were born on the same day, and they kind of died on the same day. This is exactly, if you remember the words of the Bible, when Rivka tells Jacob to take off, hit the road, Jack. Hey, actually that works out pretty well. Hit the road, Jack. Jack would be Jacob. I mean, maybe they stole that song, from the Torah, from Yaakov Avinu, I don't know. But anyways, when she tells Jacob to hit the road, she mentions that she doesn't want them to both of them to pass away on the same day, because if Esau is going to start attacking Jacob, Jacob is going to defend himself, or maybe he'll call Mike and the dogs to try to protect him, and both parties will die. So she says she saw in a prophecy, this is a prophetic vision that Rivka had, the mother of Jacob and Esau. She sees the prophetic vision that actually it did happen. They were kind of, even though Jacob had passed away 70 days before in Egypt, so still, it's kind of like when they were about to be buried, so they were actually buried kind of together. They kind of passed away on the same day. Because there's certain halachas that start only when burial kicks in, as if the person just died, not when they died. So there's different Jewish laws that pertain to such an action. Okay, so anyways, what happens? The Talmud tells us something very interesting. The eyes, when Hushim gives a blow with a sword and nails Esav's head, so the eyes, so to speak, the eyes of Esav, the head of Esav falls on the legs of Jacob, and Jacob, so to speak, the eyes of Esav fell out on the feet of Jacob, and Jacob, so to speak, opens his eyes, and he sees the fact that his brother, the wicked one, has been killed, like ding dong, the witch is dead, witch oh witch, the wicked witch, yeah, ding dong, celebrate. So it says that when Jacob saw the eyes of the wicked Esav fall onto his feet, onto Jacob's feet, he recited a verse, Yismach tzadik ki chazana kam, yirchatz pamav b'dam harasha, that the righteous celebrate when they see the downfall of the wicked. Their feet will cleanse themselves, will bathe themselves in the blood of the wicked. So this was on Jacob's feet. The blood of Esav was on the feet of Jacob because of his eyes falling out. And Jacob is celebrating the fact that this wicked person, who not only up until then was wicked, but we see throughout the history, thousands of years of history, we've seen all the Holocaust and the pogroms and all the tragedies that have befallen the Jewish people. Millions and millions, probably billions of Jews that have been destroyed, eliminated, murdered by these nations. Okay, so anyways, that's what it says in the Talmud. It says in the Talmud that his eyes fell out. But let's go a step further. It says in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, it says this in the 39th chapter, towards the end, like the last page. It says a little bit of a different take on what happened there on this day. So it says the following. At the beginning, it's very, very similar, that Naphtali, one of the sons of Jacob, is sent to go back to Egypt and to bring proof, the documents that will prove that it belongs to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Hushim, the son of Dan, is not here well, and he does what he does. And listen to this. It says, according to Rabbi Eliezer, that the head of Esav, not the eyes, the head of Esav fell into, it fell into the arms, so to speak, of Jacob. And so now, what happens? What happens now? So we see the head of Esav. Now this is not only brought down in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, this is brought down in other places, like Chesed LeAvraham. It's brought down in the 7th chapter, the 7th spring of, if I'm not mistaken, in one of it, the chapter entitled Aim Lamikra by the Chida. It's also brought down there, and many, many other books. It's brought down that the head of Esav is buried in the cave of the patriarchs. What did they do with the body of Esav? It says, the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer continues, and says the body was sent out, it was thrown out of the cave of the patriarchs, and it was sent to the land of Esav, to the land of Seir, and there his body was buried. So once again we have two burial places. You know, in Israel sometimes you have certain Arabs that the Arabs claim that the same dude is buried in 5 different places. For me, it was like a little bit hard to believe, but I guess they stole that from the Jews, because we know that Esav is buried in 2 places. On one hand, he's buried, his head is in the cave of the patriarch somewhere, rolling around, and his body is in the territory of Seir, which is in the eastern part of the land of Israel, somewhere. Okay, now, what happens then? According to, continuing on the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, who comes in to try to save, so to speak, spiritually? Who comes spiritually to save spiritually? Esav. Isaac. Now this is very interesting, because there are certain cases we see in the Torah, especially in the Talmud, where the actual person who you would least expect to come to help, okay, somebody that's not doing God's will, we would expect the last person to help them out would be of all the 3 our forefathers. We would think that Isaac, because Isaac represents tremendous judgment and strict judgment. You wouldn't see him as being like a kind, like Abraham was chesed, kindness, Jacob was mercy. All of a sudden, you know, you can imagine, like, it seems to us like Yitzchak, he's having, you know, he has 2 guns in his hand and 3 or 4 more, you know, on his belt. He's ready to go. One of these patriots. So, but it's funny how many times the forefather that comes to bat sometimes for the Jewish people, and now we see for his son, Esav, is no other, drum roll, Yitzchak, Isaac. Amazing. And listen to this conversation. Very interesting. So just let's take it back one step. We have a reunion of Esav and Jacob on their last day of life. There's once again a reunion, and it ends, okay, and it ends with both of their death, so to speak. And we have somebody that his name has the letters of Messiah. So we have here very clear that this is how it's going to go down also in the end of days. There will be some kind of reunion between the Jewish people and the nations of the world. And there's going to be some vengeance taken against the nations, which is symbolized by Chushim, the Messiah, taking off the head of Esav. Esav is the leader of the nations. It represents a total avenging of Jewish blood throughout the centuries. So we see here, very, very end of days scenario here once again. And all of a sudden comes Isaac, and of course Isaac is no longer living. He's passed away a long time ago. And now he's pleading to try to find some merit to spiritually keep his son Esav in a spiritually good place, maybe the Garden of Eden, you know, spiritually to save him. So he comes down and he pleads. He pleads, and this is based on a verse in Isaiah 26:10. And God says, but he's a wicked guy. He's a wicked guy. And Isaac, he says that, but listen, he never learned Torah. He didn't really learn. He's not a learned person, so he shouldn't be caught responsible, shouldn't be held responsible for his actions, because he never learned. He wasn't a learned person. Or according to various opinions, we have that Isaac says, look how tremendously great he was able to honor his parents. We all know that we learn a lot of tremendous secrets of how to respect our parents from none other than this guy Esav. He teaches us how to have respect for our parents. Or according to other opinion, he had a tremendous sacrifice for and a love for the land of Israel. Esav, yeah, you heard it. He had a tremendous love of the land of Israel. So therefore, one of these merits, or because he didn't learn, he was not a learned person, or because of the fact that he honored his parents tremendously, or the fact that he was connected to the land of Israel. So Isaac is going to bat for his son Esau. Please, put him into the Garden of Eden. Put him into heaven, not to hell. And then God says the following. Isaac, how can you say such a thing? How can you say such a thing? And once again, you could see if you want to see the back and forth here that we're going, just look in that verse in Isaiah 26:10, and you'll see, if you look through the lines, you'll see this conversation going on. It's a back and forth between Isaac and God. And God comes up and says to Isaac, listen, I want you to know that this son that you say, that he never learned Torah, or he had various merits, or he was connected to the land of Israel. I want you to know, connected to the land of Israel, he will destroy the land of Israel. He will destroy the Temple Mount, the temple of the Jewish people. That's his merit. As soon as, this is an amazing thing, as soon as Isaac heard that his descendants of his son Esau would destroy the land of Israel and would destroy the temple, the Beit HaMikdash of the Jewish people, he calls a timeout and says, God, you are correct. And he steps back, and that's it. The game is over. I am not going to try to make a point to save him anymore after I'm hearing what's going to be with the descendants of Esau, the nations of the world, who will destroy the land of Israel and the temple. No way. This was the cutoff point, which is very interesting. That we see, for example, the generation of the desert. The generation of the desert, even though there were many, many sins that you could read about in the Bible, what really cut them off and forced them to remain 40 years in the desert and not go into the land of Israel was only after the sin of the spies, where 10 of the 12 spies recommended not to go into the land of Israel. Which is an amazing thing, because there were tremendous transgressions, sins that took place before that. And Hashem did not cut off the possibilities of repenting. It was only after there was a sin against the land of Israel, the land of God, that was the end game. No more. The Jewish people, it was decided that they would have to be killed off. That entire generation from the ages of 20 to 60 was entirely killed off for the next 39 years. What about the other sins? There's many, many sins. But it's very interesting to see the sin against the land of Israel is taken very, very seriously by God Almighty. So anyways, we see that even Isaac will try to bring out good points of Esau, his son Esau, but even in the end, Isaac will agree that he should be tremendously punished, and he backs off entirely. He backs off entirely. This also appears